Ndị be anyị kenekwanụ m unu. Anyị sị ka ụbọchị nkịta mmadụ na anyị na mma. Anyị sị ka nkonye chiri ya zelu dịka o si dị. Ya bụ Eastern News 24 ka anyị si were wetara ya bụ ozi unu je gị ịnụ ugbu a n'iru akwụkwọ gbasịta maka ya bụ ife na-eme n'obodo nọ n'ime ya anụ nwere onwe ndị Igbo na-azọ. Dịka o si dị ekwere unu nkwa na gị wetara na update gbasịta maka ije Maazị Nnamdi Kanu versus Nigerian government. Alright, ife anyị ji maka wee bịa tata bụ na ekene dị Chukwu oke abịa mana ndị mba ụwa anya asago onye ọbụla na a na-eti ezi ọnụ gbasịta maka keesi Maazị Nnamdi Kanu nwere n'obodo a and nnukwu ife ka ọ bụ. So dịka unu ya ejige ya bụ ife anyị ji maka ya wee bịa according to the Biafran activist, quote, Maazị Nnamdi Kanu's open letter to UN and AU, ya African Union, European Union, gbasịta maka quest for injustice. Alright, ya bụ ife ka eji maka wee bịa gee ntị na ọfụma dịka ihe ga ya bụ ife ị ga-esi tinyere anyị alụ nke gị n'ụdị nke gị gbasịta maka ya bụ oyi chere n'ihe niile na-ekwu n'iru akwụkwọ n'ụbọchị ụbọchị nketa. Alright, over to you.
Jurisdiction of the court, Maazị Nnamdi Kanu, leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, penned a powerful letter to the general public alleging that the government and its judiciary have struck an unholy and fraudulent alliance. These were claims made in his letter that was dated 14th February 2025. Maazị Nnamdi Kanu began by drawing the attention of the general public to what he described as serial and executive fraud being perpetrated against him since his extraordinary rendition in 2021. He reminded Nigerians that the Federal High Court in Abuja had on March 1st, 2017, ruled that IPOB is not an unlawful group, but that the federal government, instead of appealing, secretly got IPOB tagged a terrorist group in an ex parte proceeding without notifying him or IPOB. Citing Section 34, subsection 1A of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended, Maazị Kanu noted that the Federal High Court declared his rendition from Kenya unconstitutional and ordered an apology and compensation from the government, but despite this, he remains in detention. He also recalled that the 2022 Court of Appeal ruling of his abduction on the 27th day of June 2021 violated international law and stripped Nigerian courts of jurisdiction over his case, but that the government continued his detention. In recent history, on the 15th of December 2023, he recalled that the Supreme Court sent his case back to the Federal High Court for trial and criticized the revocation of his bail. But it appeared that the Federal High Court ignored the ruling and continued this detention. Maazị Kanu, following all this, noted that he requested the recusal of Justice Binta Onyako because, I quote, I had enough of taking my chances at getting justice from a judge that in June 2021 sent me to secret police detention without fair hearing, later refused to transfer me to prison to better prepare for my trial, and capped it all by refusing to restore my bail and instead ordered an accelerated trial in the face of the reality that I will never get a fair trial while detained at the DSS. He noted that his request was granted and the judge recused herself, but the chief judge ignored this order and sent the case back to the recused judge. In the end, Maazị Nnamdi Kanu claims his case is being deliberately kept from impartial judges, and he vows not to submit to any fair trial conducted by unconstitutional courts. In his words, not now, not ever. And to, of course, assess this recent open letter, we are joined now in the studio by Chukwuma Ephraim Okenwa, who is the Executive Director, Lead Network Africa. Thank you, sir, for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Sir. What was your first reaction to Maazị Nnamdi Kanu's attitude during his last court hearing, which he says he was not even supposed to attend? He only did that because of his respect for the court. Your thoughts?
Well, I think it is timely and expected because when it's clear that maybe you have like legal proceedings allegedly in place, but it's clear that the court is not ready to serve justice. You know, there has been this back and forth, whether to seek for political solution or legal. And sometimes when you move it towards political, back against the legal, and even the legal proceedings are not respected. So you have judgment and counter judgment. And one would wonder, Just like I think Nnamdi Kanu must have looked at it realistically to tell himself, to what ends? Where is this going to be like? Is this not really be like incarcerating me for life? So I just have to give it like a fighting chance, to really once more, make this a front burner issue as it ought to be. Because clearly trying to play the gentleman certainly is not going to work in his favor.
Okay, observing the events thus far and all the litigations and whatnot, there's a statement which is made that the Nigerian state and the judiciary, they have struck an unholy and fraudulent alliance regarding to, what's happening and looking at this case from 2021 up until now. Do you think there's kind of truth in this allegation?
Yeah, certainly, because he cited instances. What makes him believe that there's that unholy alliance? First and foremost, citing a case of the Nigerian Constitution, the very fact that a judgment was already, given, and considering the fact that even the federal government did not obey the judgment, why would there not be like a need for like a stay of execution, right? Being that a judgment already have been given, and that is not the law. And clearly he states that and say, well, this is not fair to me. Why does this seem to, why does this seem different when it has to do with my own case? It says, is this no longer like the position of the law? And when you also look at the way he was brought back into Nigeria, the extraordinary rendition, there is everything wrong about that particular process. And by the virtue of that, like he cited, and like, the appellate court also has, tend to agree with that, is that, that by that very singular thing, no court, has that jurisdiction, since fundamentally on the premise with which the trial was commenced is faulty.
Yes. All right. Let's come now to you, Chief Emperor Bona. Now, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu insists that a chief judge has no power to force a lawyer on a case that he could have actually appealed in court before sending the lawyer back. So you are aware of Justice Binta Nyako recusing herself, and then according to her explanation, the chief judge put her back on the case, among other things, because she has been following this case since 2015, and she has a lot of knowledge on the intricacies and technicalities of the case. Now, can you tell us if the chief judge actually has the power, the jurisdiction, to put Justice Binta Nyako back on a case that she previously recused herself from without going through the legal process of appealing such a recusal? Chief Emperor, go ahead if you're with us. I think we've lost him there, probably poor network, but let's come back to you. Would you like to react to that?
Okay, so basically, just like, one of the things anyone could identify Mazi for is the very fact that he's quite very knowledgeable. And, just like the law is not only applicable to lawyers and to the court, but to everyone in the society, just like our health. And having a sound knowledge about that and your rights would actually make you to, display your assertiveness when needed and to demand, that the right thing be done. And I think looking at his position and the very fact also that he was able to present a previous judgment as gazetted, referencing it saying, this is the Nigeria law. All I'm demanding for is to respect that. That if a judge recuses, him or herself in a certain case, then you can't force it on that particular person, right? So if that is the position of the law, then I think that should be respected, rather than just force someone. And the very fact that, I'm not a lawyer, but there's this statement that lawyers always say, that justice must not only be done, but must be seen to be done. So what that means is that if someone says, come on, I don't have confidence in you, right? And decide to withdraw the case or even apply, then that should be respected. That person is not like the emblem or the only symbol of law in that particular society. The person is only saying, it happens also in football matches.
Yes. When
for whatever reason, you have every reason to say, I don't have confidence in this umpire.
Okay, it's been said that regarding the extraordinary rendition, regarding on how Nnamdi Kanu was brought into the country, that there's literally no case till something that was spoiled is fixed. It was Abdel Farouk Simi, a lawyer, and with his book Nigeria and its criminal justice system, exposing the rots in the judiciary. Now, Nnamdi Kanu is crying out loud, saying that this same judiciary, the way the case is being approached, is not fair to him. In all this right now, we would say that the judiciary system in Nigeria is no longer the last hope of a common man to get justice.
Yeah, certainly. Like over time, right? Just like one executive was cited as quoting that currently we don't have three arms of government, but the Trinity. You understand? And that unholy alliance defies the very essence of separation of power, the principle of separation of powers, which should make it that each arm of power should be able to serve as a check on the other. But it does appear that whether you're looking at the legislators, where even executive now install the leadership of the House, whether it's at the federal or at the state, we see like it's whoever the governor or the president wants, they eventually emerge. And then also we see like the level of influence also, even when it has to do with cases in the courts. So with such kind of, judiciary allowing itself and its powers to be cowed by the judiciary, we certainly cannot, it can no longer be said to be true that the judiciary remains the last hope of the common man, but actually a place of, a kind of an instrument or a weapon, to the strong and to the elites.
Yeah.
You understand? And the executive, which they can use it well at will to actually further advance their political objectives. Because this whole issue, if you look at it, it ought to be like an issue of like reviewing what is this young man saying? Does it really constitute terrorism and all of the things that is being said? Looking at it clearly from a legal standpoint. Yeah. But we say it's more of political. Keep him there, let him suffer, let him, just, for no just reason.
So now you have still not responded, giving us your reaction to how he handled matters during his last hearing. Do you think that he had the leeway to react the way he did? Because he was heated, just briefly. How did you feel about that, his reaction?
Yeah, like honestly, like I did mention, I actually reacted to that. I said that very timely. Because, where else you expect like, his deliverance or something?
Okay, now away from that, some people are saying that he should have even stopped going to court in the first place. That if he knows that court no longer has jurisdiction to handle his case, that why even go? Whether it be for respect of the court, for the court or not, that he shouldn't have kept going. Are you of that school of thought?
Well, let me say something. If even in the next court, the court insists that he must be brought to the court, Nnamdi Kanu is not beyond Nigeria. That's the simple truth. DSS will find a way. 500 million like he alleged is enough, to muster all of the firepower, the strength to make him appear, in the court. After all, like people can even be compelled to say the truth. You understand? There could be forceful arrest, forceful detention, even his own case. So if they were able to move him from another country to appear in Nigeria, is it now when he's within Nigeria and with the secret police that bring him to the court? But what we are actually saying is that the very question before us is whether the mannerism with which the federal government and judiciary is following this contravenes his fundamental rights as a citizen, his right to freedom, his right to self-determination, his right to advocacy. So these are like the front burner issues.
Right.
And most importantly, another thing I want to say, over time, I'm one of those that have said that, what we've seen over time from the Southeast governors is politics within the Kanu's issue, right? Come out in the public as, let's release him, all of the pictures. Let me tell you the simple truth. The only thing that can frame Nnamdi Kanu as it is at the moment, it's not a legal solution, but a political one. And Southeast governors must take the lead.
It's very important. Do you think that laws that favor Nnamdi Kanu are just deliberately and conveniently being broken by the federal government, things that should actually favor him in his case?
That's exactly what we see playing out. Because first and foremost, like we pointed out, extraordinary rendition renders the case invalid, renders all of the courts with no jurisdiction to continue that trial. Yeah, because in law, I mean, lawyers will always say you can't place nothing upon nothing and expect it to stand. You know, so what that means in this particular case is, so you want to like start something right to serve justice, but in a very wrong foundation. How is that supposed to happen? You understand what I'm saying? So there is something fundamentally wrong about like the process. And that also like faults everything about, you know, the trials and the proceedings, right? You know, so what the government would have done would have been to first to get it right, apologize, pay the damages and all the rest of it, you understand? Because that is not the law. The Nigerian law doesn't support that. The international law and conventions that Nigeria is a signatory to does also not support this.
So if Nnamdi Kanu is eventually found guilty, if the government continues to treat the case this way, what would be the consequence of it? Because it's a very serious case.
Okay, so see the thing is, if they want to find him guilty, right? Really on what basis? I mean, it's been charges upon charges.
Treason, terrorism.
I really should think, even with the level of interest that the government has, and that is why you see politics panning out, but then on the wings of legality. Now, what I see play out is, if whether it's the judiciary, you know, taking a sudden decision, or the executive, you know, taking a conclusive decision on this, it has its own implication, whichever way you want to look at it. So what I think what plays out is, okay, let's keep, you know, adjourning this case. So let me give an instance. So just imagine if the court now says, oh, he's found guilty, right? Guilty of what, many would ask. And that may mean that the law court is going to lose its credibility. And then on the part of the government, coming down to say, okay, release him or detain him for life. I mean, one will wonder why government will have to like interfere further, you know, after you've extraordinarily, you know, brought him back to Nigeria. So it's something that is a bit challenging. And one of the things I actually see, you know, which, you know, many pundits actually expected, is a British citizen. You know, what's the role of the British government and all the rest. But of course, it was also follow the activities of Nnamdi Kanu. It appeared that some of the powers that would have helped him, he also relegated them. You understand? Yes. Also like the Southeast governors. So it's almost like, fine, he had a good cause, right? But then the problem could be that, you know, some of the relationship and power brokers that would have aided his cause at this particular point, it looked like he destroyed all those bridges. But that's a conversation for another day.
But my case I want to make here is adherence to international human rights laws. At this point in time, how would you think the world would be looking at Nigeria? You know, how they are reacting at this point in time, you know, adhering to international human rights laws regarding Nnamdi Kanu. One time he was denied medical aid. You know, he was crying out. One time he was denied access to his attorneys. He was crying out. Your take?
The interesting thing is that when you look at human rights reports, right, of some developing nations, you always see like some level of consistency. And that is the consistency in disregarding some of the conventions that they are part of. I mean, Nigeria is not part of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, for instance. You know, all of the 193 nations of the United Nations are all part of the conventions. But sadly, you know, when it comes to like implementation, and especially the very fact that it's just a moral obligation, it's not binding. International laws, it's just like, okay, what do you just do to show that you've got conscience? I mean, nobody's going to punish you, nobody's going to, and just based on that, you know, it's just okay to like just choose the one you can do.
But don't that affect relationships between nations? Regarding that, this country, when it comes to certain type of behavior, you know, they could actually be attributed to.
Oji, I'd like to answer that question. There are many things going on in Nigeria now that affect our image nationally speaking, internationally speaking, even beyond Nnamdi Kanu's case. But what we're looking at now in the foreign realm is that Nnamdi Kanu is saying that many of the offenses he's being accused of, he actually committed while in the UK. So he should be tried in the UK, so to speak. So what do you feel about that? Why is it being ignored?
Yeah, what I feel, and that's what I said, right? I mean, if you followed his broadcast, which I did, like for some of the broadcasts, you could see him like at some point, you know that at some point, he also left the UK and relocated to America. There was a reason for that. I mean, where like you stay in a country and begin to speak against, that country. Then when things like this come up, maybe your government would also feel like, come on, if we are coming to ask this guy that he be released, wouldn't he also be like a sort of a challenge?
Could that actually be the reason why the British is giving a blind eye to
That's
this
exactly.
Because his brother is calling them out that he's a British citizen.
That's
and you guys
exactly.
haven't actually intervened in this case.
I mean, like, let me tell you the simple truth. It just appeared that the British government was in some regard behaving like Nigeria government in Nnamdi Kanu's case. You can't hold a British citizen unjustly, even if it's one person. I mean, do you know when they were one expatriate from the U.S.
Yes.
Right, was kidnapped in the up north? They sent the U.S. Navy just in a matter of hours. You understand? The hoodlums have to release it. I mean, you can't even think of that. I mean, if you are who? If you want terrorism, maybe you call yourself a terrorist or ISIS, and you want your show to end. When you catch an American citizen or US or UK citizen, don't handle them properly. Then you know that power pass power, right? You can't do those things maybe you do with Mali government and Niger with like world powers, right? That influences what happens, that can use what a man drone, right? Survey the whole place and take away whoever they want to take. They can end all of it in a twinkling of an eye, right? So you can't afford to. But I think the challenge is that's why I say that he probably, right, destroyed bridges, voices like critical stakeholders that will be able to match Nigeria government.
I mean, every possibility should be looked at this point. But I have a very important question for you. Do you think that Justice Binta Anyako should continue to handle Mazi Nnamdi Kanu's trial?
I don't think so. As a matter of fact, you are a judge. If someone says, I lack confidence in you, you are not the only judge in Nigeria. Neither is the court where you preside over, the only court in Nigeria. It's as very simple. If somebody also comes and say, I don't have confidence in this doctor, your case will be transferred. I mean, you have that right. You understand? It's part of your right as a citizen. You say, okay, you understand? Yeah. Where the problem with Nnamdi is, you send the person to another court, another, and he keeps rejecting all day. Then it's as good as also rejecting justice.
Could it be that other judges are actually rejecting to, preside on this case, making the chief judge to take it back to justice?
Certainly not. The chief justice, Justice So might actually be looking at it like, if we comply with what Nnamdi Kanu has requested, right? It will just look like we are weaklings. So let's attack it from the place of power. So you're looking at
a place of ego as well.
The place of ego. That's what is playing out. But Justice Binta Anyako understands the law. You understand? There's provision for you to recuse yourself in a case. And that's exactly what she did. And that should be respected.
And it's called for taking his case maybe down here east or south.
Yes, his team is asking, if no other judge in Abuja is willing to take up the case, and if Justice Binta Anyako has actually previously recused herself, that his case should be transferred to the southeast or the south where it can be handled. But there are also concerns in that regard. And I would like to also re-echo what Nnamdi said on the breakdown last week. Once the case is transferred to the southeast, it's almost like putting the case in the belly of the beast.
That's right.
Because what happens to Mazi Nnamdi Kanu has a direct implication on the southeast region.
Right. That's right.
But let's gain your thoughts.
That's right. I wouldn't support that either. Yeah, because you could imagine what it is like, trying for the trial days in far away Abuja. Not to talk about maybe when it's one of the courts in the southeast. All of the followers could converge there. I tell you, 5 million naira will not be enough. You understand? To provide the security, because what you are going to see is like a complete war situation, right? People that want to reach out, because they are literally those that see Nnamdi Kanu as Messiah in the southeast, like literally, right? I do not blame them, but whatever be the case, what we are advocating for is let this case be handled properly, right? The things that he kept on pointing about, the issue of marginalization, right? Was there a civil war in Nigeria, correct? Where Igbos was the 3R, right? Applicable to the Igbo? Certainly not, right? Nobody helped in reconstructing Igbo land. You understand? There was no proper reconciliation. You know, all of those things like to ensure that even like some of that India will heal properly. You understand? You know, so some of the things, and we see this marginalization continue even till today. So if he's saying, come on, we don't want to be part of one Nigeria and all the rest of it, all that a responsible government ought to do would be, can we really look at this man's position? And if we still want them to be part of one Nigeria, can we negotiate? Can we bring them to the table of dialogue and say, if we do A, B, C, D, right? Can we all be one? Because I mean, oneness is negotiable. Division is also negotiable. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, anything you belong to, you have the right to be treated as equal stakeholders. Ndị Igbo are co-equal stakeholders in the Nigeria project and not that. I mean, we are not tenants in the One Nigeria project.
Okay, what I want to ask, well, let's talk about skepticism. The Nigerian states being skeptical about Nnamdi Kanu and releasing him, right? Could this be attributed to his boldness or his court followership or the things he knows, right? That if you let this man go, he wouldn't shut up. He will still be abusing, maybe this time around it's going to be President Tinubu, right? And is this one of the things that is making to harness that political stance of negotiation other than the judiciary?
Yeah, of course, the fear is imminent, and that is also the fears that our Southeast governors have. Releasing him, are you releasing him exactly to do what? I mean, come on. Yeah. You've had like the first instance, right? You know, where like certain bail conditions were met and he was released. What were the outcomes, right? We saw like a kind of like promax and one that was even like a kind of, it became stronger because at that point, now they kind of gained a Mandela status, right? You know, somebody who's, you know, suffered for the cause he believes in, because all of these things actually have a way of like, you know, making the struggle stronger, right? You know, but I think in matters like this, there's nothing as good as like bringing him to the table of dialogue. So say, okay, come on, right? You know, we can release you. We can seek for political solution, but what exactly, right? You know, how will this happen? If it requires collaborating with other nations, maybe to help seek for exile, whatever might be the option, put all of it on the table and negotiate. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If it is okay, like a situation of saying, okay, if we release you, you stay in the Southeast, are you going to keep your mouth shut? Are you still going to continue with the Radio Biafra or whatever be the case? But that is, of course, most of the
I mean, we're already out of time, but it's great to also leave on this hook. And that is the fact that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu knows his right to agitate for an independent state of Biafra.
Right. That's right.
And he mentioned it too during that court hearing. He knows his right.
That's right.
He has established his right to agitate for that. So whatever the federal government is doing, he knows that. So whether he's going to keep quiet when he leaves, if he leaves detention, that's a question I would like to throw open to our viewer. Do you think that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu would rest on his laurels, would stop agitating when he leaves because of what he has been put through? Or do you think that it would even reinforce his commitment to agitate for an independent state of Biafra? Let's leave it at that. Of course, drop your comments on that video. Let us know what you think. And of course, much later, I would also bring you more insights on the legal perspective to this discussion. Sir, you've done a great job on this. Thank you so much for breaking it down for us the way that you've done. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
ndị banyị ngwadalụ dị nne dịka unu si wee na-esore na ya ị na-eme n'ilu akwụkwọ na Eastern News 24 ka ife were ikwu gbasịta maka ya bụ ife ndị a niile anyị ji maka ya wee bịa n'ilu akwụkwọ gbasịta maka the open letter Mazi Nnamdi Kanu degara ndị mba ụwa. Gwa ife iche n'ụdị nke gị gbasịta maka ya bụ ife ka ifu ka o si adị and fụkwanụ ka ya bụ ife si aga ngwa ka emesịa n'ụmụnne m.